So, how's Endor? Hey, Captain. Everything's, cool down here. Everybody's pretty much still alive. But could you, get in closer? I gotta tell you something. I don't want Darth Vader to hear it. Yeah, so, a whole bunch of these bears. No, not even big bears. They're like little bears. They came out of the woods. And they had, sticks and stones. And they took over our walkers and took our guns away from us. Yeah, we lost. Everything's done for down here. So anyway, I'm sure I'm fired, right? Hello and welcome. Over the last week, I have given myself the opportunity to watch 3 things that includes purely Ewoks. The first one being Ewoks, the TV series from the 80s. The movie, The Ewoks, Caravan of Courage from the 80s, and its sequel, Ewoks, The Battle for Endor. Now, to be fair to these movies and this TV show, I'm going to give myself 1 minute on this hourglass timer to say what's good about all 3 of them. And then I'm going to trash all 3 of them overwhelmingly because there's a lot to say about them that's not good.
Ewoks, the TV series. Some of the episodes were really good. Some of them were so good, I actually wish that they ended up being movies instead of just single episodes. And they would have made great plots for different movies. And I really kind of wish that they would have been the plots for the movies that were end up being made after them or around them. But that's not how it happened. The Caravan of Courage. They used the same Ewok suits from Return of the Jedi, same music, and the settings for where they shot the movie was amazing. It was very cinematic. Looked great, just like in Return of the Jedi. Some of the same places, same stuff. Looked really nice. The Battle for Endor. It's the same as the Caravan of Courage. I mean, same stuff as from the last movie.
Now that I've given myself 1 minute to declare what's good about these, let's get into what's the bad. And to help me, I'm going to have my friend here today, Mr. Dinosaur. Thanks for having me. Thank you for coming, Mr. Dinosaur. Well, when I used to watch these as a kid, I don't remember them being trash. But these are, my God, they're disgusting. He's going to help me kind of discuss what was not so good about these 2 movies in this series. And I'm going to need some help because there's a lot to get through. First, we'll start with the Caravan of Courage, and then we'll move on to the Battle for Endor. And once we get past the fact that these are Star Wars movies, we can see them for what they really are. Garbage. In the Caravan of Courage, the family crash lands on Endor, and the kids get separated from the parents. While the parents are looking for these kids, a huge beast comes out of the woods and snatches them up and takes them to his lair. The beast looks like it's just a dude in a costume. And he's supposed to be very, very large, like the size of a building large. And you can tell he's a man, not just because he's walking and whatever, but it's because you can see his eyes clearly through the mask. The whole costume is very low quality. It's nothing compared to the Wampa that we saw in Empire. And honestly, all the special effects are kind of low budget. Most of the time, if you aren't seeing a creature that isn't like an Ewok, the Ewoks look great, but all other creatures look really kind of bad. And anytime we saw something besides the large monster that took the parents, it was claymation, stop motion claymation, but it wasn't good. And here's the thing, I love practical effects. I think practical effects will hold up in the long run, and they'll always look good. But when it comes to this, it looks like the claymation was at the quality of Robot Chicken. Or if you've ever seen that show Kablam, the one that has the alien and the caveman. That's the quality this claymation was, and that's the path that's the one that they took. It doesn't look good. I mean, George Lucas produced these movies. He was heavily involved. You would think with all his money and loving Star Wars, he would have put some of the assets from the past movies into this movies to make them better, but I guess that didn't happen. The Ewoks stumble upon the ship, and then they meet the kids who are hiding out in it while they're looking for their parents, because their parents just seemingly disappeared to them. But the Ewoks decide to take them and help them. They decide to go on this journey to help them find their parents. And along the way, Wicket, the main Ewok in the story, and pretty much the story in both movies and the show, decides that he's going to be the main one to help them, but they're going to enlist more help along the way. Along the way, they meet this wizard Ewok named Logray, which he becomes important later on in this discussion, and more importantly in the cartoon series. What I believe this movie was setting out to do was something similar to The Fellowship of the Ring, the Lord of the Rings movie. But the quality of the Lord of the Rings movie is an A+, and the quality of the Caravan of Courage was a Fellowship of the Ring D+ version. And that's pretty much it. But anyway, we get all the way to the end. The Ewoks have helped these two kids travel across Endor to get to this mountain to where this big monster person, this man in the costume, is residing, and where his parents have been taken to, or the kids' parents have been taken to. They trick the monster into coming towards them and chasing them towards this big crevasse in the ground, crevasse, whatever you want to call it, and they get him to fall into this big crevice in the ground. And you can see him fall all the way down. I mean, it's very apparent that he fell all the way down in it. But in like a spy from Splinter Cell, you remember those old games from like the early 2000s? Yeah. He sneakily comes all the way back up without anybody knowing, without anybody hearing or anything, and sneaks back up on them and tries to eat them or kill them or whatever. Yeah, and then he falls down again. All the way down. But this time, he's probably dead, right? Probably. We don't see him again, so he's probably dead. And that's the whole story of the movie. Some aspects of the movie make it into the TV series afterwards, like Logray, and some other things. And that's nice that there's some consistencies within these 3 different items that are being made and watched. But ultimately, this movie is a whole bunch of nothing. Literally, it's an hour-and-a-half movie, and an hour of it is just a whole bunch of filler to get the kids to find their parents. Pretty much, it's like, hey, we want to get to this big monster fight scene, but we want to make this movie an hour and a half. But then we get to the acting within the movie. The kids' acting is definitely B-movie acting for sure. And whenever the Ewoks are talking, there's no subtitles. You don't know exactly what they're saying. You're supposed to kind of infer what they are saying by their actions. And there's also conveniently a narrator in this movie that lets you know what the Ewoks are thinking or what they're planning on doing. And this doesn't follow into the next movie. This is only a Caravan of Courage thing that they have a narrator that speaks in the terms of what's happening in the movie and the overall story, which is kind of weird because if it doesn't follow into the next movie, why have a narrator? But anyway, family gets rescued, the parents get rescued. Most of the Ewoks make it out. They kill the big bad monster, and then it kind of ends on a heartwarming scene where the Ewoks and the family are all sitting around a fire, you know, happy to be together. But then we get to the sequel. So you know those parents in the Caravan of Courage that the kids and the Ewoks were trying to find the entire movie? They die within the first 10 minutes of this movie, along with the brother. So what happens is there's an attack by these marauders and this witch that holds like this Lord of the Rings ring of power. And what they do is they come through and destroy the Ewok village. And the Ewok village is, for some reason, a whole bunch of little huts on the ground and not in the trees like in Return of the Jedi. It's like they the Ewoks can no longer afford house trees. It's like the Ewoks have been seriously hit by inflation and they just can't get in their house trees anymore. I don't know, it's weird. These marauders burn the whole Ewok village, take a whole bunch of Ewoks, and kill the family from the first movie. All except the little girl, Sindel. The reason for their attack is that they're after a power cell, a power source that they have seen in a drawing that is on most ships. It's the way that they run, it's the way that the ship gets power. But they believe that this is some sort of power source that will give them godlike powers and make them godlike. So they're after it, and they believe that the Ewoks must know where it is, or that the family that has the ship must know where it is. But they end up stealing it from the crash-landed ship that the family came in. During the first movie, it's revealed that the family all has these different bracelets that they wear, and the bracelets have lights on them. These lights represent the life force, or what it lets them know that each other are alive. So if the light's on, it shows that the family's alive. If the dad has a certain color, the mom has a certain color, and so on. And when the mom and the brother die first, those lights go out. And the dad and the little girl's reactions were kind of odd. They were like, oh, that's sad, I guess. And that's it. And the dad, who plays the principal on the Breakfast Club, gets shot as he's trying to save his daughter. But after he gets shot, he has enough time to give his daughter a pep talk. In his pep talk, he's pretty much like, hey, this really sucks that your family's dead and I'm about to die. But you know what? Go with the Ewoks. This is your life now. Go, live it. Escape. Live the Ewoks. And he's like, I love you. Good luck. And then he valiantly loses his life trying to hold off the marauders so his daughter can run away. Eventually, Wicket and the little girl find this creature in the woods named Teak. He takes them to this abandoned cabin, just hanging out in the woods, and he's just like, here, come sit in this cabin with me. So Wicket and Sindel think that, oh, it's just abandoned. We'll just set up shop here. Well, guess what? It's not abandoned. Some 60 or 70-year-old guy lives there, and he's not a fan of having people come around. And this guy who's got the cabin has been here for decades of time, just by himself, with him and Teak hanging out in this little cabin in the middle of the woods. And it's weird that he doesn't want to see the single first human that he's had contact with in decades. And he's just like, hey, get out of my house. Don't want you here. Okay? But he's got this ship that he came down in. They crash landed, him and his partner, his friend. They crash landed on this planet, and they've been in need for a power cell. The power cell that the Marauders have conveniently taken. Since it's a family movie, the old man comes around. He's like, you know what? I want Wicket and the little girl to stay here. I want to protect them. Well, while he's protecting them, the witch with the ring of power comes and takes the little girl. The Marauders want her at their base because they figure they can't get that power cell to give them godship. So this little girl must know. I mean, if she knows, wouldn't it make sense that she would then use that and be more powerful than them? I don't know. It doesn't seem like the Marauders were thinking anyway. So with Sindel taken, Wicket, the old man, and Teak set off to rescue her and the other Ewoks. So they storm into the place. Well, they kind of break into it sneakily. Get in, get the girl, get the Ewoks, get the power cell that they need, and get out of there. Then the Marauders pursue them because, they think this godship power cell is going to be gone forever if they don't get it. So they pursue them, and then finally the reason that this movie is called The Battle for Endor occurs. And I gotta say something. This movie shouldn't be called The Battle for Endor. It should really just been called a Battle on Endor. The battle was nothing special. Really, the battle that took place in Return of the Jedi, that was the Battle for Endor. I mean, what this was pretty much like a handful of Ewoks against like 50 orcs. Essentially. The battle ends with just two people fighting. The old man that's protecting Wicket and the other Ewoks in his ship, and the boss of the Marauders. The boss of the Marauders has like a huge sword, and the old man has a wooden staff. So they have a fight to the death. And obviously, the old man doesn't lose. He beats the Marauder. But what happens is that power ring that the witch had this entire time, the Marauder had a hold of it, and it got hit. And when it did that, it caused like some sort of power surge in the ring, which turned the Marauder, the boss, into stone. And that's how he died, and that's how the Marauders were gone. So with the power cell again in the right hands of the humans and the people that actually have the ships that know how to use the power cell, the old man and the girl, Sindel, take off and leave Endor behind. The man who's been there for decades and the girl that's been there for like months or a year. But either way, they finally get to go home. But what really busts my chops about this movie is the poster for the movie. See, when I went onto Disney Plus to watch this movie, I got my hopes up that this was going to be a little more action-packed and have this cool rogue, like Han Solo-esque type guy in it, but it didn't happen. That guy that's on the front and center of the poster doesn't exist in the movie. If he's supposed to be the dad dies in like the first 10 minutes, so it wouldn't make sense to have him front and center to be like the main guy for this movie. And if it's supposed to be the old man, they really oversold this character on the poster. It was pretty much lying to me. I got my hopes up for this based on that poster. Disney, George Lucas, you knew what you were doing. It's wrong. And finally, we get to the finale. Ewoks, the cartoon series. But first, I need to take off my jacket. Complaining about Ewoks for several minutes, for like a half hour straight, has caused a little bit of Star Wars sweat. The first sin that this show commits is its intro. It's 1 minute. 1 minute of this. A whole gosh darn minute of that. The second sin that this show commits isn't even actually its own sin. It has to do with Disney Plus. See, when you want to skip past the intro song and all that kind of stuff, the 1 minute, you press that skip intro button. You know what it does? Only skips 30 seconds of it. So you still have 30 seconds left that you personally have to skip if you don't have to endure it every single time. Whoa. Who the heck are you? Oh. Okay, I'll read that note. Don't diss my show or I'll kill your family. Seems a bit over the top, but okay. Man, those Ewoks have some hate in their hearts, huh? Generally, my first thoughts were, when I watched the first episode onward, is that this show wants to be the Smurfs. During season 1, there's an evil witch that is out to get the Ewoks. She wants to destroy them. And honestly, she is one of the ugliest characters I've ever seen, next to like Skeletor's face. But the importance of her character really isn't known until episode 9 of season 1. That's how long it takes for them to even tell you who this person is that you're dealing with most of the episodes. The evil witch's name is Morag. She holds one part of a stone, and the elder wizard of the Ewoks holds another part of the stone. The story is that Logray took it from her, stole that one part, and she's been out to get him ever since. She wants that stone back. And the importance is, when these stones are put together, they're known as the Sun Star. So as I'm explaining it, do you get the Smurfs connection? You have a tribe of people, of beings, that has like an elder that everybody follows, and he's kind of got like magic. And then they have the bad guy who is like a evil wizard or witch. It's the Smurfs, but with bears. Now you get it. Since Morag the witch is introduced at the beginning of the series, you think, hey, this is going to be the big bad guy. This is going to be the bad guy that's going to float throughout the whole series, that the story is going to progress through, and there's going to be this huge confrontation between the Ewoks and the evil witch. Well, guess what? You'd be dead wrong, because I was. As I watched it, I was like, oh, nope, she's dead. She dies pretty quick. Actually, within about a little more than the middle of the season, first season, she dies. See, what happens is, in episode 9, she reunites both stones together, and it's now the Sun Star. And when that happens, she turns into this huge, powerful lava monster, and is dead set on destroying the Ewoks. Yeah, that plan doesn't work out. You know what takes her down? Logray, the guy that had the other stone, who is like the wizard of the Ewoks, sticks a pole in the ground, and this geyser of water comes up. Not even like a big geyser of water. I mean, like, I don't know, 10 inches round diameter of water shoots out of the ground and starts spraying this big lava monster. Well, guess what? That's what defeats Morag. She's got these two powerful stones put together, and guess what? She dies by just like a small stream of water coming out of the ground. So anyway, when the water hits her, she begins to solidify and turn into like a hard solid, because the whole thing of when molten liquid cools down and turns into a solid rock. Yeah, she turns into a solid rock, crumbles, and she's just a whole bunch of pieces of like she's like a whole bunch of pieces of dead boulders and rocks. And that's what happens to her. Episode 9, Season 1, main baddie, dead. So after all that's said and done, the series, doesn't have a centralized bad guy. There's no real push for the story. It's just kind of like individualized stories about the Ewoks, about what's going on. And that's just about it. That's the rest of the series. It's not really a cohesive story that you're following and getting to know the characters. They're just kind of are just like goofy characters. They kind of just have like generic stories, and they're just not interesting. When you don't have a bad guy that pushes the story forward, that makes the good guys want to change the story, then you don't really have anything interesting to watch. Hey Nate, that Ewok's giving you another note. I will hunt down your family and stone them like a whole bunch of stormtroopers if you don't say something positive about my people's history. Okay? I wish the Ewoks would have stoned my family. Let's get to the juicy parts of this otherwise overly cooked and burnt steak. During Season 2, there's an episode that is a shining star among piles of dead womp rats. I only wish that I could bullseye these womp rats with my T-16 back home. And by womp rats, I mean Ewoks. Hashtag kill the Ewoks. Is that still a thing? Hashtag kill the Ewoks. The episode actually gives us a lot of insight to why the Empire even went to Endor in the first place, and why in Return of the Jedi they had built a base on the Endor moon. See, what's important is that the Empire is actually after the Sun Star. So something that's actually been at the beginning of the show and that we didn't know and was really important in episode 9 of Season 1 is continuing to play an important role in the rest of the series, despite its only limited run. What's important is the Empire's after that. Most importantly, The Emperor is after it. This actually jives with the rest of Star Wars and the canon of Star Wars, the history of Star Wars, is that the Emperor is always after powerful objects. If there's an item out there that has some sort of unique ability, or even whispers that it has a unique ability, the Emperor wants it. He wants to catch it, put it in a vault somewhere, and make it his. But another important part of this episode is that we get to see stormtroopers. We get to see droids, we get to see blasters, and we get to see a Star Destroyer. And seeing that is like the best part of visually for the whole series. You get to see very familiar things. It's not just like a huge forest that doesn't really change, or like bogs or a swamp or just that kind of stuff. You get to see something that's actually Star Wars and feels Star Wars-y, and that's important to the series. It makes you question, why didn't the rest of the series have that? Or it makes you even question, if this episode's so good, why didn't they start off the series like this in the beginning? If they started this series with this episode and built upon it from there, it would have probably been an okay series. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, I guess I really don't care about the Ewoks unless the Empire is industrializing their planet, or their planet is just being used by the Empire in general. I killed your mom. After watching these two movies and this cartoon series, I still love the Ewoks that were in Return of the Jedi. It hasn't changed my mind about them. After 3 industry-changing movies, the networks and the studios and George Lucas just wanted to keep the Star Wars train moving. And for some reason, they just zeroed in on the Ewoks. But since the Ewoks have killed my mom, I think now is a good time to end this. All I want to say is, I'll miss you, Mom, and thank you, George Lucas. Hey, Nate, you know what George Lucas and your mom have in common? They're both hot!